But your question was, is there anything out there worth doing? Next time you have an interview, don't care about what the committee thinks of you as you talk, because it really matters very little what other people think of you. That is a very, very, very liberating place to be in life. You know, there is a scene in the movie American Beauty, I think, where they're invited to a party, and there's this young man who is a waiter. And Kevin Spacey goes on the roof to smoke, and this guy comes, and all of a sudden, you know, the guy who had hired this young man comes and says, "I didn't tell you to take a break. You know, I'm paying you to work." And the young man says, "I quit." And it inspires Kevin Spacey. And he says he quits because, you know, he has saved so much cash in his room. He's hidden it somewhere. He doesn't really need the money. He doesn't need validation from anyone. He can just kind of tell people to get lost. And that's one of the nice things about coming to realize that nothing out there means anything, really, you know. You know, I remember going to an interview once. I think it's a place you currently teach at. And they asked me, "Well, do you consider yourself to be a good teacher? You know, are you qualified for this position?" You know, I kind of like the movie American Beauty. I'm a tenured instructor. I have nothing to lose. I'm just going there for fun, which allows me to be very honest, you know. And I said, "Look, you know, Gilgamesh tried. The poor guy ultimately said, I'm just going to write. Forget people, I'm just going to write." You know, Moses eventually said, "Aaron, you're my brother, you take over. I don't want to do this thing with these people anymore, I'm tired." You know, Jesus kind of just died on the cross. Muhammad fought, Lao Tzu left, Malcolm X, Martin Luther, they got shot. Nelson Mandela, you know, 3 decades in prison. So if Socrates, you know, if some of the greatest heroes of humanity have been unable to really educate, and I know that, I understand that, I can look at the community and say, "Listen, this is a really, really ridiculous question." You know, you can inspire people, and that's not bad. I mean, if the question was formulated in this other way, do you think you have the capacity to inspire people? The answer would be yes. To educate them, the answer is no. You know. So what you have is the presence of death, a profound teacher, and kind of like Socrates. You know, this teacher tells you, "Okay, Alison, go out there, examine things. Is there anything out there worth doing?" Well, the answer is no. So all that you can do is just go out there and tell people there is nothing out there worth doing. You're very lucky in the sense that you're in a classroom and you're teaching 4, 5, 6, 10 classes. And the foundation of who you are, what you teach, and to whom you teach, it can be that. It really doesn't matter. When you do that, SLOs go out the window, PLOs go out the window, grades go out the window. Whether someone says, you know, "I can't really make it to class like for the next 2 months, will that be okay? I really need this class." You kind of look at them and say, "Listen, deep down, I know you're a loser. You will struggle to make it work in life for you. I wish you luck. I'm here just to give you a passing grade so you can continue with your journey. I'm not going to be an obstacle. So a good amount of this sorry for using this awful word, ego, that you think that your position in life is so important that you can drag people around. You kind of just lose all of that, you know. I think ultimately it really is. In life, do you have the power to benefit and take advantage from experience? You know, if you have no job, if you don't have a relationship, if you have no money and someone very close to you dies, well, you're just going to get further depressed. If on the other hand, you're given a microphone and you're given some power where you can walk into an environment and say, life is meaningless, that makes your presence in that environment very, very, very meaningful, especially if you can eloquently, intelligently, reflectively kind of talk about that, you know, and break it open. You know, there are a lot of people who are depressed. Rumi was depressed. I mean, the Gospels, Jesus doesn't laugh, not a single page. You know, Socrates doesn't laugh. I mean, I laugh every day, you laugh every day. For us, there are things in life that are profoundly funny. And we don't laugh in a satirical way. We laugh because it's actually quite funny. And to laugh is to forget. You know, to forget that life is short, to forget that you are mortal, that any time, you know, it could happen to you. I'm just not sure why people pursue this depressing people. I mean, there is nothing joyous about all of life is suffering. I mean, that's one of the Four Noble Truths of Buddhism. But someone like the Buddha had this ability to talk about the meaninglessness of life in a very meaningful way. Your difficulty is not that life is meaningless. Your difficulty is how to make the meaningless meaningful. You know? And you're still very young. If you can kind of think about it the right way and find the right words and then string them together, and then eventually in time refine, you know, your ideas and reflections, then you can turn something that is very sad into something that's meaningfully sorrowful, that can inspire people. it just takes so much time and so much dedication. I think it's easy to talk about this stuff. It's like an alcoholic who kind of has an inspired night and he says, I'm just going to quit drinking. But it's just that one night. We had a guest here, I don't know, a month or two ago. A relatively nice young man who claimed to be a Buddhist. He was like 30. I realized that if someone was really intelligent, they would never claim such a thing. If you really understood Buddhism, first you wouldn't make such a claim. And the fact that he's such a young kid and he has the arrogance or the hubris to make such a claim is not really worth talking to. So we just talked and talked and talked. It's completely meaningless for me. But he wanted to talk, so we just talked. And there just came a point where my capacity for trash was full. So I just got up and left. Sometimes I contact people and say, do you want to teach this class? And he says, well, I have to prep for this class and it's really, really difficult and I just don't have time. I say, it's a philosophy class. It's love of wisdom. What exactly do you have to prep for? Just focus on the love and focus on the wisdom. That should make you feel profoundly incompetent, and just talk about that for like 16 weeks. There is no prepping needed. But, because, you're dealing with people who are, for the most part, counterfeit. They've gone to school, they have some degrees, but they've nearly never used their brain in the right way. The prepping becomes such a nightmare for them. They say no. They say, okay. There is this Persian guy, his name is Shahryar. He was a very strange man. He just died a few decades ago. He had gone to school to become a doctor, a physician, an MD. But unfortunately for him, he had, lack of a better word, he had a soul inside him that was kind of fully alive and poked them all the time. And in Iran it's very, very difficult to be accepted, especially in his time, to an MD program. It's nearly impossible. So you have like 10, 20, 30, 40 million people in your country, and you have like 5 physicians, and you have 20 PhDs. That's how rare it is. And so and because he was Persian, it makes him a bit more complicated in the sense that you have a culture that's 4,000 years old, seasoned by a good amount of grief. So whenever a Persian is born, grief is inside them. Pessimism, cynicism is inside them. And even though he wasn't really a good painter, he couldn't draw well either. He had an image in his head. He kept painting and drawing the shape of this woman's eye. He had never seen a woman, with those kind of eyes, but he just imagined that, I hope one day I see a woman whose eyes are shaped in this way. And he was in his 7th or 8th year of his program. And he lived in a city called Tabriz. So as he was walking to get some stuff, he runs into this woman he had never seen before. He goes to her and says, "I've been waiting for you for like 20 years. And the woman says, "Who the heck are you?" And this is Iran. A man doesn't just go and approach a woman and say hello. I mean, people will beat you up, And so, they call the police. He's cuffed. But before the police comes, and before he is handcuffed, he looks at the woman and says, "Here's my address. Okay? I know you will eventually come and knock on my door. Here's your address. Here's my address." He eventually became an MD, and after, I think, either 12 years or 13 years, he walks away from the profession. He just writes. People's physical suffering for him became meaningless. Getting a PhD and an MD in Iran for him became meaningless. Making his parents sad for him became meaningless. For the first time, he realized that his passion, his soul, just simply wants to write. And then he got sick. They had a house in Tabriz, so he goes to one of the custodians that kept his house. He said, "This is my new address. One of these days, a woman is going to knock on this door, and they're going to ask for me. Tell them I have moved to this different location." Lo and behold, 16 years later, when he is sick in the hospital, apparently the woman had gone to this guy, said, "I'm looking for Shahryar. I'm sorry, he has moved, but this is his address." The point I'm trying to make is very much like you. He had an experience that most things in life are meaningless despite the fact that I'm doing them. But came this breaking point. Not all of us are fortunate enough or maybe blessed enough to kind of have that breaking moment where you just kind of pack your things and just walk away. You know. You could become like Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, that this experience keep whispering in your ear over and over and over again until you just become pregnant with all these feelings and emotions. And it may be 2 months from now, it may be 2 years from now, maybe 10 years, 15, 20 years from now, where you kind of just say, I quit. I just don't want to do this anymore. I just want to go into the hospice and just work with, patients who are sick and dying. Right now you have the experience, but you're a little poor to do anything with it. So it just ruins you. And that's true for any relationship that's new, where the other person or the other element has more power than you do. Right now you don't have power over death, it has power over you. But you've been here before. And all of us have, you fall in love with a man or a woman, and it's like the rest of the world just disappears. It becomes meaningless. You don't even, as you're walking the streets, you don't even make eye contact with other people, regardless of how attractive they may be. Something about you says, I feel as if I'm betraying, the person I really, really like. And you just go home. The world really shrinks. And you wait and you wait and you wait until he or she comes to the door. And all of a sudden your life becomes meaningful. I guess right now, you're waiting to find some meaning from this experience. The world has kind of shrunk. You have no place to go. In some ways, one could say you've become homeless. Vahshi Bafqi has a poem, Sad Fasl Bahar, آید و بیرون ننهم گام ترسم که بیای تو و در خانه نباشم. That 100 seasons, of spring comes and goes, but I will never leave my house. I'm afraid that if I leave, even for a moment, you may come, knock on the door, and I may not be home to open it. And then I don't know how much longer I can wait, if I even have enough time, lifetime. And it's kind of like that, you have to sit. Ain al-Quzat Hamadani has this story about a cat and a mouse. If you really want to find meaning in the meaninglessness of things, be a cat, where you sit at this hole that is the home to a mouse. And if you've seen a cat, and I'm sure you have because you've had like 10 cats, they are still. They make no moves. They wait for this mouse to come out and then they devour them. There is this beautiful scene in the 7-hour movie, Jesus of Nazareth. It's near the end. Peter goes to him and says, I really like you, Jesus, And he looks at him and says, "Oh, you will betray me 3 times." He says, "No, I would never do that." He says, "Yes, you will. You're an idiot. You just don't know it yet." And it happens, because the edict was that anyone who's known Jesus must be captured and crucified. And people say, "Well, we know that guy. That guy used to walk with Jesus." It's Peter. And says, No, I don't even know who this guy is." But near the end of the movie, after he's kind of denied him 3 times, he's in this room all alone. And he screams, it's like he's banging his head to the wall. He screams, my God, help me." It's like this desperate place that he's at, where he knows he's far too weak to understand, to make any real changes about him. He just needs help. It's a very difficult place to be, where everything just feels meaningless. There comes a point where you begin to bang your head against the wall. You say, "I need help. I can't do this on my own." The difficulty is, for us, is that Peter lived 2,000 years ago, if he ever existed. The environment was religious. They had religious language. All the advertisement in society was religious. Language was everything was religious. You get married for God. You have children for God. You have a job for God. I don't really know if any one of us really can get to that point where we scream for help. Usually we kind of either go to the bottle, or we do some drugs, or we do therapy. So we never really get to that screaming, which is, I think, really, really important and essential. And you're familiar with Gurdjieff. In Ouspensky's book, Man's Evolution, he says in the very introduction, I'm not suggesting that Ouspensky knew anything, but nevertheless he wrote well, that the first step is for you to realize how helpless you are. I had a student in class today. He said he's here because he just wants to get his AA. He's a nice young man. I tried to make him feel really bad about his position. Because this day and age, you really need at least a master's degree. It's not enough to feel helpless. You also have the capacity to be at the right place where you can listen and then act on what's being told to you. Because you can't do it on your own. It's not possible.